Hello, everyone, and welcome to an episode of the GC 100 podcast. I'm your instructor and host, Dr. VG. All right, today we're going to just introduce the course, and before we do that, I'm going to introduce myself a little bit. So, who am I? Hmm, good question. Well, officially, and if you need to contact me, my name is Dr. Matthew J. Van Grinsven. Many people call me Dr. VG, Mr. VG, Matt, Professor, Professor VG, really whatever you prefer, but most commonly referred to as Dr. VG. So here we go. This is an online asynchronous course, but if you happen to be in Marquette and on campus, feel free to stop in my physical office space, 3117 Weston Hall. I do have weekly synchronous office hours, both in person and remotely from on Wednesdays from 1 to 4:30 p.m. Or you can schedule an appointment. Here's my email, which is also an EduCat. And then if you want to call me directly, you can use my office phone. I am going to ask to help me and to help you so I can respond to you quicker that you use GC 100 online in the subject line of all email correspondences. I get lots of emails from many different classes, students, people's colleagues, etc., and it really just helps me get back to you more rapidly by doing so. So please make sure to include GC 100 online in any and all email correspondence. And then to try to kind of facilitate any sort of synchronous connection, you can call me, or if you'd like to kind of Zoom connect, so to speak. I found it easier to use this Google Meeting invitation, which is embedded directly into your Gmail, or if you look in your little Google icon box, there's a Google Meeting, and you can simply send me an invitation to connect, and it'll ping me, and I'll connect with you when I'm ready. That is during my office hours. It's possible that I may be already in another Google Meeting or meeting with the student at that time. So please be patient and or just send me an email and we'll connect then. So moving on, I thought I'd introduce a little bit about who I am before we jump into this course. I've lived in many places in northern North America. Here, I was born on the Mississippi River in Davenport, Iowa. I spent most of grade school in Ontario, near Niagara Falls in St. Catharines, Ontario. I've lived in Iowa twice, actually, and then I also spent a portion of middle school and then high school in Wisconsin. Finally, now I've lived here both in Marquette as well as up in Houghton and Hancock for nearly a decade, and I spent some time in the desert Southwest in Moab, Utah. So more on that. Beyond where I've been, what have I done? How did I get here? I am a proud NMU alum. In fact, I have my undergraduate degree here from Northern Michigan University in earth science, and then I went on and gained a master's in geology, really focused on hydrology and hydrogeology and brook trout spawning habitat. More on that later from Michigan Tech. And then I spent some time in the desert Southwest working for the National Park Service here as a hydrologic technician before returning to Michigan, where I completed my PhD while working with the U.S. Forest Service as a research scientist. And then I jumped here to NMU, and I've been happily teaching here at NMU since 2015. So there's a little bit about me, or at least my professional background, a little bit about my personal background. I love to explore. I'm a professor of physical geography, and I love all things earth science. And so if I'm not out by myself or with my friends, you'll often find me with my family. I have three kids, a son and two daughters, where we're often canoeing, hiking, biking, skiing, etc. And speaking of skiing, it's probably what I think about most in my life. I really, really, literally like to ski, and specifically, I seek the untracked powder turn deep in the mountains and backwoods of Michigan, where I'm an avid backcountry telemark skier. So maybe I'll see you out on the slopes or in the middle of nowhere, rambling around on the snow sometime. A couple random facts about me. When I lived in Utah, I lived in this very unique tent-like structure known as a yome, which is kind of like a yurt, which was off-grid and really in the middle of nowhere down a two-track road. That was pretty fun and amazing. And then another random fact is I can do a standing backflip. Once upon a time, I was a gymnast, and I've kept that skill up over the years. So there's a picture of me launching a backflip on the national lawn. All right. Um, really like I'm super blessed and excited to be a scientist. And not only that, I have a blast doing it. So if you're interested in a science career, feel free to reach out, email, contact me. I'm happy to share some stories and some professional tips, so to speak. But all these pictures on the screen were taken of me or by me while I was working as a scientist. So good times, anyways. I'll probably share more stories about these different places in the Western UP. Here's Zion National Park and Bryce Canyon, as well as northern Marquette County and the Keweenaw and beyond. So before we jump into the class, just thought I'd share some recent highlights. Some of the previous pictures were from my son when he was 2, who he is now 14, and he loves all things soccer. Literally, he's on the Marquette Senior High School soccer team. I have 2 daughters, as I said. I have a daughter, Etta, who's 11 now, and she loves art and exploring and swimming. So I'm married and have another almost 3-year-old on Dean here. And so collectively, we continue to explore some 2025 highlights. I got to go to Puerto Rico, to Vieques, Puerto Rico, actually, which was phenomenal. Never been there before. I highly recommend it. I got to go skiing all over the place, including Michigan, British Columbia, Washington State, and Montana here with my friend Bill, deep into the backcountry. Let's see, what else did we do? I was on a boat on the Pacific Ocean with my family, and you'll hear more throughout the semester about some of my more recent research activities with Michigan State Extension, looking at sustainable farming practices. So here's a picture of an NMU student working with me this past summer. Okay, I think that's enough of a highlight reel, and now we can jump into what this course is going to look like. So, our course overview, just kind of really broad here. This is an online asynchronous web course, and so it's going to consist like you're watching now of these podcast videos. I'll also post the slides with those videos for your reference, just as a PDF file. Each week we'll have one discussion forum where you will be required to post at least once and possibly also post and reply to other posts. More on that in the future. There will be a multitude of different types of interactive participation questions and activities. Some of those will look like the form. It'll just literally say participation question 1, so to speak, on Educat. So that's one form. We'll be using some interactive content as well. And then some of the podcast videos, not this one, but some of them will have embedded interactive kind of participatory content that's for credit as well. So you'll see that pop up throughout the semester. And as you'll see here, starting even this week, beyond some of these kind of participation questions, we'll have a series of exercises. Some weeks we might have one or possibly a couple exercises that you'll complete with some assistance, whether that's kind of a video podcast or some sort of tutorial. Some of them are embedded interactive tutorial type exercises. And then finally, there'll be a series of open note quizzes and exams. I'll talk more about that in just a little bit. I did want to mention that there's a freely available e-text, while there's perhaps more up-to-date textbooks. A textbook, or I do not require you purchase a textbook for this course, but here through NMU's Lydia Olson library, we have free access to what I think is a really great comprehensive physical geography text. So go ahead, check that out. I do have in the syllabus, or kind of the chapters that we're working through with each of these lecture topics. Again, it is recommended and not required. So you are not required to purchase this book, nor are you required, or do I expect any of the content in the book. Rather, to start that over, any of the content that I would include in a quiz or an exam, I'm going to present directly to you. So I will never take information from this text or any text that I haven't taught you to put into a quiz or exam. So anyways, it's just a great resource if there's parts that you find a little challenging or need a little extra kind of information about. I do highly recommend using this e-text as a reference, in addition to augment the lecture content. All right, so kind of course breakdown. As you can see, there's many different ways to earn points, and collectively there's a lot of points earned through participatory activities, where a large majority of these really you'll gain the points as long as you do them. Some of the exercises will be graded for credit based upon the content you're delivering, many of them being interactive and many of them also allowing for multiple attempts. So you'll kind of, I think it's pretty straightforward, and you'll get into each of these and see how they work. Really, these series of participation questions, as you'll see, the section participation questions on Educat, those are largely intended to help prepare you for the quizzes and exams. So they're kind of example questions and formats that you will likely see some similar type of question or questions in a quiz or an exam. The exercises are meant to be kind of more of a engaging, hands-on, I guess maybe not always hands-on, but interactive activity, kind of a deep dive, critical thinking, if you will. And so there are a lot of the content that we'll do in an exercise is going to directly reinforce the lecture. However, some of those types of activities I would not expect that you would be doing in the form of a quiz or an exam. So it's a little bit more of an extension and application of our knowledge. Okay, and then the discussion forums will be pretty straightforward, tying to that week's lecture content. And there's a whole section, discussion forums, right on Educat. And so each week there'll be a weekly discussion where I'll pose a question or a prompt, and there'll be responses required from each of you. Okay, a little bit on quizzes and exams. I do like to have many small quizzes and exams. They are all open note, and as I will describe here in the next slide, you'll be completing these through Respondus Lockdown browser. You are encouraged, highly encouraged, to take notes. Those could be handwritten or typed, but I'm going to ask that you print them because we're going to use Respondus browser, Lockdown browser, and monitor to complete those quizzes and exams. Largely, I find by taking notes, we're learning and we're applying and we're interacting with the material. So while there are many quizzes and exams, they're all fairly small. They're all open note, and I find that it's a good way to kind of, for all of us to keep on top of the lecture content. And then finally, there will be, and there is no final comprehensive exam. There is no midterm or final exam in this course. I'd rather have many small distributed quizzes and exams where no singular quiz or an exam is going to have a major bearing on your final outcome in the course. So, for example, there is no final comprehensive exam. There's only a series of exams for those sections. And as you'll see on Educat, there's 4 major sections. So there's 4 exams in the course. And then back to the final project, instead of or in lieu of a final comprehensive exam, I would prefer that you demonstrate your synthesized knowledge in the form of a short written report of the physical geography of a natural area. I have one slide in this podcast here to kind of highlight that, but there's a section and a handout right on Educat where you can learn some more, and I'll return to that later this semester to make sure that we're all looking at that. So that's 10% of your overall grade. A little bit about how each of these kind of break down or what they look like. As I mentioned, the participation questions, there's a participation questions section on Educat. Each question may have a series of sub-questions within it. Each one of those activities could be worth anywhere from 1 to up to 6 points. They're often 2 or 3 points each, depending on the question. There'll be 20 or 30 of these total questions throughout this semester. I do want to also mention that there is an activity or a participation grade, and that will be tied directly to the interactive podcast lectures. And so I'm going to present some of these podcasts where it'll be interactive content with embedded questions, and simply by completing those questions, you'll earn those points, and that will all add into the total amount here of your participation grade in the form of an activity. So it'll be pretty straightforward, really, by reviewing and interacting with these podcasts, you will earn those points directly. There is an exercises section on Educat, and as you'll see this week already, we have 2 fairly short but interactive exercises where it should be pretty self-explanatory. I'm always here to help. Feel free to reach out, ask me any questions that you may have about these exercises. But each week we'll be completing one or two exercises that directly connect and extend that week's lecture content. We'll have these series of discussion forums. There'll be one forum post per week where you'll either need to post once and or post once as well as respond to other posts. So more on that. Look for those. We have quizzes and exams, as I mentioned. There are 5 total quizzes that are all pretty short and they're worth a total of 15 points. They are open note again, and I'll kind of describe what open note means here in a future slide. But both quizzes and then exams, there's 4 total exams, one for each of the major 4 sections of this course. So your kind of breakdown for that. And again, these participation questions being a great reference in terms of what to expect for the quizzes and exams, the types of questions, content, etc. And then finally, the final project here, it's 50 points total, and go directly to that final project tab on Educat to learn a little bit more about that at this time. Okay, so we're going to be using Respondus Lockdown Browser as well as Monitor to attempt and complete all quizzes and exams that are open note. And here I'm going to define that, but there in each of these, I provide this for you. You are encouraged and permitted to use handwritten and hand-typed notes. I want you to take notes, and I want you to use those notes in the quizzes and exams. And so I do ask, since we're going to be using Respondus Monitor, that if you type your notes, which is totally fine, that you print those notes out and use it as a reference in front of you as you are completing those quizzes and exams. So please ask me if you have any questions about that. You are not permitted to directly like print out the lecture slides or use a book or a website during these quizzes and exams. You should have plenty of time. Like I said, even the exams are not that long, but you'll have 30 minutes total to complete these short quizzes, and then 60 minutes total to complete these series of exams. Okay, just a very brief introduction to the final project. It's called Physical Geography of your favorite natural area. I encourage you to pick some kind of like a national park, a state park, a biosphere reserve, a wilderness area, not just kind of a random location in the middle of some forest or something or someone's backyard. While that could work, if you pick a national park, for example, or a state park like Porcupine Mountains or Isle Royal or any other kind of known park, those typically have really great websites that pretty much have everything you need to know, at least in reference to complete that final project. So again, picking a natural area like a national park, a state park, but I think that's good for now, but please see that tab in the handout on Educat about that final project. Okay, as this week, you'll see a weekly announcement. I'm going to release one weekly announcement, and in that announcement will contain everything you need to know for that week. It'll have kind of what we're doing and then a list of activities, exercises, if there's a quiz or an exam, discussion forum, etc. So you'll see these announcements in your email, but there's a section also, as you see, on Educat called announcements, and they will all be compiled within that section. So you can, at any moment here in week 1 or in a future week like week 7, you can simply go to the week 7 announcement and refer to what you are expected to complete. Many of those will include a checklist too, so to make sure that you have watched this lecture topic and completed that participation activity, completed the exercise, and if there was a quiz or an exam. So please look for those. I work really hard to get these out as soon as possible. I have been teaching physical geography for many years now, and it is one of my favorite classes to teach, among all the other classes, I suppose. But this is literally the first time I've ever taught physical geography online. And so I've worked hard in advance to prepare lots of material, but I'm going to continue to work and develop new material, meaning that I have a lot of work to do, which is good. But I'm going to work to release all this content as early as possible on Mondays. Sometimes you're going to see them before you even wake up, like early Monday morning, but it's possible that I may not get it out until sometime by Monday afternoon. So just look for these weekly announcements released on Mondays, often in the mornings, but I'm going to give myself a deadline of 4 p.m. on Mondays. And then all of that content that is assigned will be due by the following Sunday, or that coming Sunday, which is on a future slide. So every week, I'll assign material on Monday and it's due by the end of the day by midnight on Sunday night. Okay, so as you've already seen, your everything is just going to be completely through Educat. There's no kind of like extra websites or Google Classrooms or anything like that. So just make sure to stay up with Educat. So every week, as I just mentioned, lecture contents, so the podcasts, the videos, some of those being interactive, one discussion forum post, so these participation questions, see participation section on Educat, and then there'll be these lecture participation activities, so the kind of embedded interactive questions that are integrated within the podcast, and then exercises. So each week you'll have the series of exercises, and then not every week, but some of the weeks you'll have one quiz or an exam to complete. Okay. So I like to post all of the slides as a PDF. So you always have access to the slides. You can view them, you can download them. So in each of those like lecture one, lecture two, for example, you'll see this podcast. You'll also see a link to click and download the slides. And then for some of the weeks that the podcast will be these H5P interactive activities that have kind of integrated questions with them, I'm going to also make those videos just available for you so that if you want to come back and review them later, you don't have to complete those integrated questions every single time you review the slides. Let's see. So some will be interactive, as I just said. You'll want to make sure to review these podcast videos as well as the slides before attempting any of the participation questions, any of the exercises, and most definitely before attempting a quiz or an exam. And so all the material that I'm going to release on Monday every week is intended to prepare you to complete all of these activities and exercises. So please make sure to go through and review these first. So kind of a checklist to be maybe repeated here. Review the lecture, complete the post, complete the participation activities scheduled for that week, any exercise or exercises, as well as any quiz or an exam. And so all of these will be due, actually as many of them as possible by 11:59. Sometimes Educat makes only allows it to be 11:55 p.m. for some reason, but essentially by midnight on Sunday, all of these will be due. So it is an asynchronous course, and so it is up to you to choose when you have time to schedule that or to work it into your schedule to review all this material. And while it's asynchronous, there is one general forum, and I encourage you to work together with other online students. You will have to in the form of some of these discussion forums, but in the form of an exercise, especially, I encourage you to work together if you can, even if that's remote, to the best of your abilities. But ultimately, each one of you is expected to separately, independently submit all of your answers to all of the activities, including the exercises, even if you worked on it with somebody else. So just make sure to submit all of your own material. Please review the syllabus also posted on Educat, and ask me if you have any questions. I think I've covered enough in this kind of introductory topic. Really looking forward to sharing physical geography with all of you. And as I said, please include GC100 online in any sort of email correspondence. It really just helps me respond much more rapidly to each of you. Please know that if you don't get my response, is not guaranteed or may be delayed. But anyways, with that, Dr. VG is signing off.